All right, got about a minute after. We got a lot to get through today, so I think we'll go ahead and begin. Welcome everyone to today's Title Topics webinar. These are Alta's free presentations that we offer every month on issues important to title professionals. I am Jeremy Yowie, Alta's Vice President of Communications, and today we have a great program lined up about cybersecurity awareness and training. Um, Kind of the big news in the cybersecurity world over the past week was the reported data breach by Equifax and the estimated 143 million consumers who were affected, exposing not only their names but social security numbers and other data. And interestingly, I saw a report 2 days before this news surfaced. A group called Identity Theft Resource Center reported that this year alone, there have been 975 data breaches, exposing nearly 19.4 million records. And I'm sure I'm no different than all you out there that we get peppered with these phishing emails, nonstop on a daily basis, and you all are handling transactions, and there are people who are aware of this and trying to interject into the process at the right time to steal data, steal funds. I'm sure that's probably one of the big things that are keeping everyone up at night. And what's also alarming is that according to many reports and government reports is that over 90% of these cyber attacks are successfully executed due to human error. So hopefully after today's webinar, we can lower that number a bit. Before starting, I just need to touch on a few housekeeping items. A copy of today's presentation was emailed earlier about an hour ago to all registrants. If you registered in the past hour, you probably didn't get the email. Shoot me an email at jyohe@alta.org. That's jyohe@alta.org, and I can shoot you a copy after the presentation. You can also download a PDF in the handouts section. All participant lines are muted for today's webinar. If at any time you have a question, please submit them through the question box. We'll hold a little time at the end for Q&A. Many of you have asked, as an added benefit, today's presentation is being recorded. After it's processed, the recording will be available on Alta's website at alta.org/title topics. That's alta.org/title topics. I need to thank Fidelity National Title Group for sponsoring our Title Topics webinars this year. Their support allows us to continue providing these educational opportunities free of charge. And with that out of the way, let me briefly introduce today's speaker. Joining us today, we have Melissa Ellis. Melissa is the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Systems Management Enterprises. SME offers a variety of managed security, compliance solutions, and technical support. And Melissa has been helping small and medium-sized businesses in these areas for over a decade. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Melissa.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Jeremy. I appreciate that. And thank you to Alta for allowing me to give this very important presentation. And of course, thank you all for attending this afternoon. As Jeremy mentioned, and we all know when we hear these reports every day in the media or from our colleagues or from other business owners, IT security is a really, really big deal these days, and making sure that you educate yourself and your staff on the various different things that you can do is very important. So I appreciate you all attending and taking your time, and hopefully that you leave today with some immediate things that you can do and some food for thought for some things that you can do down the road. So let's go ahead and get started. As Jeremy said, this is security awareness training. This is an often overlooked area in many organizations, and the number one target of many of these breaches has to do with humans, with employees. So we're going to go through all the different areas that are risks and exposures to your business, and again, hopefully you guys will leave with some good takeaways. So let's go ahead and get started here. Starting with what is information security. and information security is designed to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of computer system data from those with malicious intentions. And what does that mean? Everything that we as business owners have on our systems, our data, our client data, falls under the lump of information security and everything that we're supposed to do to protect it. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Many of you are aware, I would be surprised if there's anyone out there that's not aware of Alta's best practices that came out several years ago. They consisted of 7 pillars. What we're going to talk about today is specific to pillar number 3, which is adopting and maintaining a written privacy policy, protecting non-public personal information. So as we go through the presentation, we're definitely going to talk about the many areas of exposure and risk, but I'm also going to focus a lot on the solutions. I'm sure I could spend hours upon hours sharing scary stories and things that my clients have experienced and things I've heard and what I've, listened to on the news, but I really want to make sure that we offer some solutions to you and making sure that you're as protected as possible. So when we talk about non-public personal information, I think that is nowadays pretty self-explanatory. I should not be able to go in and put my name, Melissa Ellis, into Google and have it pop up my social security number, any of my financial account numbers, W-2s. You guys are handling a lot of that information when it comes to going through the various stages of your transaction. So the information that you're collecting, I always say, when in doubt, assume it's non-public personal information and use some sort of encryption when sending it electronically. You don't want this information to get out. It is very valuable to others as far as identity theft is up hundreds of percent. Millions upon millions of people's identity is stolen. And with Equifax's breach that occurred, I can only imagine that number is going to become astounding. So your due diligence is to make sure that that non-public personal information is being protected, and when in doubt, assume it is something that you should protect. It's easy enough to send an encrypted email or to add some level of protection to it. All right, so as I mentioned, the most targeted threat is the employee. As you can see in the graphic there to the right of the screen, human error causes an alarming rise of 93% of data breaches globally. And that matches to what Jeremy said. We are the biggest threat. We are the ones that hackers are expecting to be able to, get that phishing email passed, make a phone call, get us to give up information. A lot of IT companies that we check out or we do assessments on networks, we're finding a lot of IT companies aren't doing their job. So it is a human error that's causing a lot of these situations. And it is about training your employees, putting those policies and procedures in place, making sure that your IT company is doing what they need to do and having all of that verified. Okay, so what is your role? As you see, it's on us. All of us are responsible. I always say that we're all part of the security team, all of us, no matter what position you hold in the company, whether you're the owner, you're the receptionist, you're a third-party vendor, you are part of the transaction at all. We're all part of the security team. We all are responsible for protecting our clients' data, protecting the data of the organization. When we talk about non-public personal information, we're dealing mainly with your client data. However, putting the safeguards in place is also going to protect the data of your organization, which is very important. Any business owners out there know the number of hours and blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into building your business. And so you want to make sure that your data is protected as well. We've had instances where competitors have hacked into other competitors' systems to get valuable information. What is their marketing plan? Who are their clients? What real estate agents do they have relationships with? What are their finances looking like? So it does happen. You want to make sure that you also protect the data of your organization. And it is on all of us to follow the policies and procedures that have been outlined. It's, the owner is very important that they look at implementing, if you haven't, policies and procedures and making sure that your employees are trained on them and that you enforce that they follow them. And of course, the question report any suspicious activity. And we will get more into that as we go through the presentation. But basically, if you see something that doesn't make sense, for instance, you have your shred it guy that normally comes in to pick up your shredding material on the third Wednesday of every month, and it's Bob, and you've seen him for years, and now we have a new guy coming in on the first Monday to pick up that same material. It is your job to question that, to pick up the phone, call into Shred It Yourself, or whoever that vendor is, and verify why this person is here on a different day and is a different person. So we'll get more into that, but that is part of your role as well. Okay, so why is all of this important? Well, value equals data. Obviously there's a financial gain to any of these attackers getting in, right? They're looking to either, like they did with Equifax, get all of that information. They're selling all of those social security numbers, all of that, all those credit card numbers, all of that information is being sold. Of course, in your line of work, your business, that escrow account, that's, if I can get that employee or that client of the title agent to send money someplace that they shouldn't, then that's a quick couple $100,000, if not millions of dollars for me for a pretty basic hack, if you will. So that's not a very sophisticated style of hacking, but it equates to a huge value. It's important because loss of data can, of course, have serious consequences. Many businesses, almost half the businesses, will go out of business. They'll have to close their doors immediately after a data breach. A lot of us are not equipped with a war chest like an Equifax to deal with the ramifications and legalities that surround having an all-out data breach. We don't have, the ability to do reputation control, to be able to go out there and try to keep people coming and buying from us after something like that happens. So it's very difficult to recover. And if you survive, in the beginning, a small percentage of businesses will actually survive after a couple years. So why are you a target? Just to give you a quick background on us, we've been in business 17 years, and we've always had a IT security focus. It's what we've done. It's where our passion has been. And when it comes to your particular business, and a lot of our clients have been in the title industry and settlement service companies over that period of time, it was a very different conversation many years ago. And now you are certainly, I'd be surprised if any of you didn't believe that you were a highly targeted industry. Because you're a small business, many of us are small business owners, we are considered to be low-hanging fruit. We don't have the millions of dollars to spend on security. We don't have the resources to put in place. And a lot of us, unfortunately, don't believe that it's even necessary. So we're an easy target. They expect that, we're not doing what we're supposed to. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we're not. And of course, like I touched on, we have the non-public personal information, which is valuable. They will sell that over and over again. And then the escrow account, which, that, again, we can have tons of money in that at any given time. So what are the common threats that you're dealing with? Phishing, obviously, is a big one. We're going to get more into that on a couple slides down, where I kind of go through some examples and definitions on phishing and spear phishing. Ransomware is another big issue, and I'm sure many of you have heard of ransomware by now. That's on the news as well. Back on Mother's Day weekend, there was that big ransomware attack called WannaCry that affected 150 countries. It spread very quickly. Basically what it did, it went out, and once, it doesn't just jump on your machine, someone would click or download a file onto that workstation, and all of a sudden it would spread, and it would be looking for any systems that were not patched. It was looking for a specific patch that Microsoft had released back in March. However, this came out in May. It would go out and look for that. So any machines that were not patched the way they were supposed to, it would encrypt all of their files. And unlike other malicious software, when ransomware infects your system, it does actually give you a nice note. A screen will pop up saying that you have been a victim of ransomware, that they have encrypted all of your files, and they give you a countdown. Typically, it's 72 hours they give you to go ahead and pay the ransom. And a couple of problems with that, of course, you can't work. You know, all your files are out there. Someone has them. They're encrypted. And if you were to pay the ransom, you go on a list to be a repeat target for them, because you paid once, they're assuming you're going to pay again. So they tell you to never pay the ransom, number one. And number two, the way that you can mitigate your exposure to ransomware, or if you were to mitigate the damage, if you were to have ransomware on your computers, is to have a backup. And so a lot of agents, when I'm out there talking to them, don't understand. They know they have a backup, but when I ask, okay, well, talk to me about how does your backup work? Where is your data stored? A lot of the answers, 9 times out of 10, I get is, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'll have to check with my IT company. So one of the takeaways I want you to have today is, each of you, I would love for you to go back to your office and understand what your backup situation is. Call your IT company if they're an outsourced IT company, or talk to your IT guy there in the office and understand what is it that you have in place for backup. Okay, because when it comes to ransomware, that is something that will help mitigate your exposure, because you can have your systems cleaned and you can restore from backup and be back up in business. So you really want to make sure that you understand your backup. How long will it take if your computers were to die, if your server was to crash, a hard drive fails? Do you know how long it would take for you to be back up and running? So those are some questions I would like for you to take away from today that are critical. Outside of the ransomware problem, it's just critical to business continuity, to understand what type of backup you have in place. If that backup, if your system crashes, how long is it going to take you to get back up and running? You know, do you have hardware ready to go, or is your IT company having to order some, which could take days? And we've seen companies down for 5-7 days waiting for that new server to be installed after having to order it and reload it. So I would certainly advise that you go ahead and figure that out. But ransomware, again, does not jump on your machines. It is another human error on clicking on an email or a link in an email or downloading a document. There's different ways, again, that you can prevent that, and one of the main ones is training your employees on not to click on those emails. Social media is another big common threat. The reason being, a lot of employees will, have their accounts public, and whether it's your personal account or your LinkedIn account or different things like that, social media is a great place for people to gather information. People, meaning attackers, to start learning about, your business, who are you connected to, how can they, be more successful at a phishing attack against you, because they're going to come with some information, or how are they going to call into your office and try to gather more information? Well, they're going to already be able to do some name dropping. If someone looked at my LinkedIn and saw that I was connected to Jeremy, they could easily kind of start delving deep into, okay, well, who else is within Alta? Well, now will Melissa take a phone call because I know all this information about her? And so you really want to be careful with your social media and what you put out there. Okay, so get a little bit more on the phishing and spear phishing, just some definitions. We lump it all into phishing. Phishing is basically the attempt to acquire sensitive information, such as usernames and passwords, from someone that you really don't know. They're going to send you an email just hoping that you're going to put the information in. It could come from PayPal or something like that. I get those all the time, where it's, we need you to update your information. Well, that's not the way that PayPal is going to do it. So that's a phishing email. Spear phishing is really what you guys are dealing with in your industry, where an email appears to be from an individual or business that you know. So you already have that trust kind of built into it. You already see that, okay, well, I am dealing with this real estate agent during this transaction, and so they're trying to get you to immediately trust and do what the email says. Just a little definition there. Okay, so how to spot phishing emails. Typically, these are going to have, if not all of them, at least one of these emotions in the phishing email, and we're going to kind of go through some examples. But the first one here, greed, We're looking for some sort of financial reward. It can be as simple as a Starbucks gift card. Click here and, download, fill out this survey, and we'll give you a $10 Starbucks gift card. Who doesn't want a Starbucks gift card? That's a very easy one to get people. Another one could be, I've seen a lot of Bed Bath & Beyond gift cards. A lot of it does center around surveys where if you fill it out, then you get something. I always say if you didn't ask for it, then don't think that someone's just sending you something for free. So that is an example of greed. Urgency, of course, would deal with it, what you guys are seeing all the time with the wire fraud. You're in the middle of a transaction, you're coming down to closing, or maybe you have already closed, and all of a sudden it's this quick, we need to change these wiring instructions, we need to send this here, and there's going to be an urgency wrapped around that. Curiosity is another big one. We see a lot of these around celebrity deaths. For instance, when Prince died in the elevator, there were a lot of emails that came out, like listen to, Prince's last words, and a lot of people are curious. Same with this Equifax, put your social security number in here and see if, the hackers have your information. We're going to see a lot of those types of emails when it comes to Equifax. Again, curiosity. They want people to put their information in, or is your password on a, cracked password list? Put your password in here. And there are people that fall for this. Fear is another thing. If you don't do this, then something bad is going to happen. We saw a lot of this with Office 365 emails, phishing emails, where they would send, a lot of us have Office 365. They would send these emails out saying, something had happened to your email account and you needed to, within 24 hours, click on this link to provide information or all of your email would be deleted. That's scary if you hear all of your emails going to be deleted. So a lot of people were falling for that. So when you're looking at emails, and again, it is about slowing down and taking time and reviewing things, you really want to look for one of these types of emotions associated with it.
Who's here?
All right. So here are some of the signatures. All right, sorry about that. I had a little interruption there. Looking at the screen here, these are some of the common areas that we've looked at before when it comes to trying to figure out if you have a phishing email. We have email signatures, sender address, email tone. These are all good things. Now, unfortunately, the attackers are very sophisticated in understanding the way we work, so it takes a little bit more than even just looking at these particular areas. You can hover over links, seeing if everything matches up. The problem with that nowadays is some of this malware is now clued in that you're hovering over it and it will release upon hover. So you really want to be careful. You want to read it without hovering because a lot of these new malware that is released upon hovering over the links. Right, so let's get through to some real examples here. Here's some examples. When I started doing presentations back in the spring, I surveyed a lot of my clients and said, hey, can you share with me some stories that you've heard or send me some examples that you're getting every day and that you believe are phishing emails. And so within a couple days, I had too many. I had to send an email back out thanking everyone for their help and because I just had a ton of emails. But this particular example, I just pulled out a few of them because they were really good examples on some of the things that you can look for. And you'll see here the address, and I've highlighted the problems that I've found with this. You have the address from Christine Wendell, the from address, is totally different than the address at the bottom in her email signature. Totally two different email addresses. When you look at the Dulles Area Association of Realtors, this does exist, and all this information checks out. However, the Association of Realtors is not going to be part of this type of transaction. They're not going to send you this type of email. Now, the client that this came to was working on this address, so it was very interesting that she had received something like this, but was able to quickly, because of these clues, decide that this was a phishing email and was able to delete it. This example here, basically what I want you to understand is on your phone, when you pull up emails on your mobile device, when you look at your mobile devices, the email is going to look different. You're not going to see this full email address. You're going to see from Gibson Leslie, but you're not going to see this bogus email address. So sometimes a good practice is to pull up your email actually on your desktop where you will see the full email address, or be able to click into that on your phone. But a lot of us use our phone, and that's how we work on a day-to-day basis. We want to make sure that you're getting all the information, because that is a big clue that this is a bogus email. This Gibson Leslie was someone that she was working with. However, even the email itself on what they were, it just didn't make sense. They weren't to send them a transaction report or anything like that. So none of this made sense in the timeline. And that's one thing you also want to do, is in the timeline of your events, you want to make sure that it matches a normal course of business, because sometimes things will be interjected and it doesn't make sense. This email here has to do with just the tone of this. Doesn't make any sense. Pete at crouchrealtygroup.com does exist. All this information here is correct, and it made sense that my agent or my client was getting this information. However, when you read, this is the part that clues you in here. Kindly find attached closing protection agreement, which that lingo is not used, sent using Dropbox for your perusal. Perusal is a word that's not commonly used either. So this was a clue based on the wording that this email, something was wrong with it. So you really just want to read, and it does take time, but you want to stop and you want to think about it, and you want to, if you have any questions, pick up the phone. I always say, go out of this email. Do not call the numbers on the emails. Go outside of them to your trusted source. You've collected that information ahead of time, and use that information to call your real estate agent, or you would call your client. Because a lot of times these numbers here will be different. We've had an instance where we had a client who received a phishing email. She was somewhat suspicious, so she decided to call, but she called the number. She recognized the first 6 numbers she thought were right. One of the numbers was transposed in the actual end of the phone number, and she called and got a different voice than what she was familiar with. So you always want to go outside of that email anytime you have a question. Okay, so what do you do if you receive a phishing email? You want to, if you've identified that it's a phishing email you from a known realtor or known client, of course you want to call them and let them know. Chances are someone's email has been hacked. More than likely, it appears a lot of times starts with a realtor. So you want to call and alert everybody that this has happened. If you do fall victim, if something does occur, you do want to report it to the FBI. They do want to know. I had a presentation that I did back in June where I had a couple FBI agents come in as part of the presentation with me. And because a lot of agents don't know, what do I do if I fall victim, or if I receive a phishing email that's trying to defraud me in some way? The FBI does want to know. Please take down this website, www.ic3.gov. This is a third-party provider that they have partnered with, where you would go and you would upload these phishing emails. They don't want the phishing emails on the Starbucks gift card or anything like that, or UPS is trying to get you to pick up download a package receipt or something like that. They want the wire instruction changes fraudulent emails, because they're trying to just kind of start piecing things together. And whether you fall victim or not, if you receive one of those emails, please send it to them. If you do fall victim, of course, you're going to call the bank immediately, call all parties involved, FBI, and if you have cyber insurance, you would need to contact them as well. Okay, common threats. We're going to talk a little bit about passwords in the next slide. Mobile devices is a huge concern. Their mobile vulnerabilities are up over 200%. These little phones that we walk around with are computers, and we need to treat them as such. You want to make sure that, just like you would have on your workstation, that you have an antivirus program on them, you have passwords on them, especially if you're accessing corporate email or your corporate system with your mobile devices or your employees. You want to make sure that you treat them as if they are computers. We've seen a really big increase in vulnerabilities and viruses written for mobile devices, viruses coming through SMS text messages. So you want to look at making sure your mobile device is secure as you would a computer. Social engineering is a very big threat, and anyone that's unfamiliar with that term, social engineering, I would call it human hacking. And basically, someone would call in or show up at your establishment. A good example to use, and a little bit of background on my experience with social engineering. I go to DEF CON, which is the largest hacking convention in Las Vegas every year. There's about 25,000 hackers that come from all over the world to learn from each other. They're not all bad, to learn from each other and just to get a better understanding of what's going on out there. We specifically go to learn how to protect our clients better. I spend a lot of time in the social engineering area, and they basically have contests where you go into a room and you watch people compete on gathering information from companies. You will have, say, 10 people competing. You'll go in as a spectator. They'll have these participants in a soundproof booth. They will have been given a couple weeks to research their target, and you will watch them call into these companies with a list of points that they're trying to obtain. Now, none of this is used for fraudulent purposes during this conference. Any details that are given out that could be used against someone, it's muted so we don't hear it. But they do go through a series of trying to gather points and listening to how easy it is for them to talk to their employees, to the employee that they're speaking to, and gather information is astonishing. It is every single time until they got to upper management, they were able to get the information that they were seeking. One example, someone called in pretending to be from the accounting department. Now you have to understand, anyone doing a social engineering attack more than likely has done their research. I get the question from our clients all the time, well, they seem like they knew what they were talking about. Well, of course they did, because they were researching it. That's how they use social media to connect the dots. They've, looked at your website. They called in before without you knowing it, but they'll call in pretending to be someone that they're not. For instance, it's usually, you have that sense of urgency about it too. For instance, call in on a Friday afternoon pretending to be your IT guy. I'm Tom from ABC Tech Company, and I got some weekend work to do, and I can't get into the server. Can you just log me into your workstation, and I will easily be able to connect from there. And it's amazing how many times people will just do that because they will hear the familiar name, the company, and think it's okay. So it is about teaching your employees to stop and think and to question. Just like I gave that Shreddit example where someone's showing up, that has actually happened. Anytime I've given presentations, I've had a couple people come back and say, you know what, someone came into our office and left with 6 bins of material posing as our shredding company. So know that it's out there. Know that they are going to sound like they know what they're talking about because they have done their research and they're looking to get as much information because, again, there's a value to that for them. So that is certainly a common threat that we're seeing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about another common threat here. Right here, what you're seeing on your screen is an example of password cracking. And passwords, aside from the human error, are probably the second. I would say human error is number one on the ways people can get into your systems. Number two are passwords. And I cannot stress enough the importance of making sure that your passwords are complex, that you change them often. You do not use passwords across multiple platforms. So if you have a Bank of America account, Wells Fargo account, Nations account, whatever, you don't have the same passwords across all your financial institutions, across your social media platforms. You want to have unique user IDs and passwords. I know that it's not convenient and it's really difficult to remember passwords. However, it's really important that you do that because once they get one password, they're going to quickly try it in various different places. What you're seeing here again is, as I talk, you're going to start seeing passwords pop up. And this is just an example of how easy it is to crack passwords. Hackers can receive up to $30 for each valid password, which seems kind of low. So that's just kind of an average, but they get paid. Again, it's all about that value that they're getting out of it. So what they will do, there's a couple different ways that they can hack your passwords, and these tools are free. This particular example is just someone knowing how to go in to the system and start cracking passwords. My next screen will show you can buy a tool or get a tool for free that makes it really simple for those of us that aren't as tech savvy to do. So you don't have to be an all-in, all-out hacker to be able to get into a passwords. You can also use very simple tools that allow you to simply crack passwords. But there's two main ways. There's something called a brute force attack, which is just passwords, and you saw how quickly that started popping up there. And we're going to have some more in just a couple seconds. But brute force is basically algorithms written that one computer is trying to attack another computer and crack the passwords. You will see this attack happen over and over and over again. One way to mitigate this type of attack is to make sure that your machines are locked down for the number of times someone can try to log in. And your IT company can do that for you. Make sure that maybe it's only 3 times or 5 times, but shut that ability just to constantly try to log in will help alleviate the ability for someone to brute force attack your system. One of the more common ways that attackers are hacking into passwords is something called a dictionary attack, and those programs are looking for words used out of a normal dictionary or a hacker's dictionary. A hacker's dictionary will consist of all the password lists obtained during different breaches, and those will allow them to write programs on following trends. What are the most commonly used passwords? And they will be able to then build this algorithm that will quickly, and that's what we used here, was a dictionary attack, and you can see how quick that we were able to crack those passwords in just the time that I was talking about it. So the biggest thing is for you to make sure that your passwords are complex, meaning they're 10 to 12 characters in length, and that you change them at least every 90 days, if not earlier than that. And also you have upper and lower case, numbers, symbols, the whole bit. Make sure that there's nothing that makes sense about that password, nothing that relates to you, not your spouse's name, your dog's name, the street you live on, any of that, because again, they will glean information that they've gathered from you to see if they can guess your password. So again, it's very annoying and somewhat difficult to have to keep up with changing passwords. There are different password vaults, if you will, that you can download and have on your computer that will encrypt your password. There are password encryption services such as LastPass that store your passwords. Pick a way that you can store it, that you can comfortably store your passwords and update them as needed, because there's something, again, that is critical. It's a 7-character password can be cracked in 0.29 milliseconds, which is really scary. So you really want to make sure that your passwords are as complex as possible. What you're seeing on the screen now is a very easy interface for someone to use. You don't have to be a hacker that can get into coding and doing all that stuff. This system here, you can get free, or you can, get a little bit more of a quicker system for a fee, very low fee, and you can crack passwords just as you saw in the previous slide. All right, so after all that, I'm sure there's a lot out there saying, well, that's all well and good, Melissa, it's still not going to happen to me. It only happens to large companies, and why would someone target my business? And I understand that, sometimes that's the way we think, or it hasn't happened yet, or, I have some things in place, but maybe not all of them. Just really want to make sure that you implement as much as you can. It's all about putting the layers of security in place. I just wish there was a magic wand I could wave and say, okay, everything's fixed now and we're safe, but it is about putting the layers of security in place. Just some quick stats here. Data breaches, which are only on the rise, increased 55%. I know Alta came out with a stat where wire fraud attacks were up 480%. I only imagine that's even going up. Phishing is going up. It's safe to say everything is going up. This is not going to end anytime soon, if ever, and it is about us coming out and putting those layers of securities in place. And I also talk about minimizing the damage when something happens, because it's just a matter of time, unfortunately, that something does happen. So you want to make sure that you can minimize the amount of damage. All right, I'm going to kind of go through this because I want to get to some examples here and then give you some ideas of what you need to put in place. I'm sure if it hasn't happened to you, you know someone who this has happened to. Wire fraud attacks are out there. It's horrible. It's happening every day, unfortunately. Here's some examples of some big ones across the country. The one here in Maryland, the FBI says a group of fraudsters with roots in West Africa used fake emails to fool a settlement company into wiring them money. They lost $411,000. New York, a judge was trying to sell her apartment, received an email she thought was from her real estate lawyer. Here we go. She lost $1 million. In DC, actually, a title company is getting sued by their clients because they received a fraudulent email and they thought it was coming from their title company and transferred $1.57 million out. So you can see all of this, these are large numbers. I don't know any companies that can withstand losing this type of money or have your clients lose that type of money. It's very, very important to put, when it comes to all of your policies and procedures, to put things in place to make sure your employees know what to expect and how to handle different situations that may arise. Okay, some of these examples, big examples here, are companies where we've had big data breaches. I could add Equifax on here, top of the list. All of these companies, some of us have been affected by. I leave Anthem on there because it's happened over and over again. Kaspersky Lab is an antivirus company that it seems to, they've actually just taken them off the shelf because they have ties to Russia, so they don't sell them in some of the stores here any longer. Ashley Madison, I leave on there because this is a good example of putting a policy in place where you don't use your corporate email. Ashley Madison, for those that don't know, they were hacked, and because they offered a service where you could sign up for this service and I guess find a partner even if you're married type deal, and hacktivists did not like that, so they went it because they claimed that all their information was private, so they hacked into them and they divulged everyone who had signed up with Ashley Madison. The people that use their business and corporate email address they were then dealing with extortion because they would have these groups calling into them saying, we're going to expose you unless you pay X number of dollars. So it became a really big deal, and it's a good reason why you would have your employees, a policy in place that your employees do not use corporate email outside of business. Okay, so what do you look out for in 2017? We have some, obviously phishing, ransomware is a big deal. Hacktivism is an example I just gave with Ashley Madison, where groups, if they don't agree with something, are going to hack into corporations. We have tons of IRS scams. Typo squatting they've done analytics to see how people are incorrectly spelling URLs, and then they are reserving those and making them look like that particular site. So Bank of America may be Bank O America, and it will look like a Bank of America site. So you really want to look out for that. Okay, so what can you do? Obviously, we can learn to identify phishing emails, go outside of your trusted source, or go outside to your trusted source and verify. Make sure you secure your devices. Check that defaults aren't automatically checked. Make sure that you understand, how to create a complex password, 10 to 12 characters, upper and lower case. Follow your policies, procedures. Be vigilant. Pick up the phone when in doubt and call. And as a business, some of the things that you need to make sure that you have in place, and again, it is about putting the layers of security down. You would want to make sure that your network is as secure as possible. You want to make sure that any employees connecting from home are as secure as possible as well. You want to make sure all the antivirus and malware updates are applied, all the computers are updated. I would tell you the biggest thing that we find when we do vulnerability testing is when we go test devices and networks, which is considered to be a vulnerability test, we find hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities existing because computers are not updated. We, not just Microsoft updates, but your third-party service providers such as Java and the browsers, Internet Explorer, Firefox, all of those types of things, we find hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities because computers are not being updated. So that is something to make sure that that is happening. Policies and procedures, again, are critical. Writing down, what is your password policy? What is your breach notification? If something happened to you, like happened to Equifax, how would you handle that? Do you know who would be in charge of notifying your clients? How would you notify your clients? Do you have money set aside to put the credit monitoring in place for them and to fight any legal battles? What is it that you would do? So you want to make sure that you have your policies and procedures down and that they are updated and your employees are trained on them. You want to make sure that you train your employees on cybersecurity issues and how, what are their responsibilities? How do they handle different scenarios? I always equate it to, you don't want to give an unlicensed driver a key to your brand new car that you've worked so hard for. You've saved years and years up to get this brand new car, and you're going to put an unlicensed driver in it that hasn't been trained. Same thing for your business. You have worked really hard to build your business and maintain your business. You want to make sure your employees are as trained as they can be and they know your expectations, and it's a continuous type of thing. You just want to make sure you keep that in front of them. Cyber insurance is very important. There is no 100% guarantee that having everything in place is going to fend off all attackers. So cyber insurance is something you want to understand your policy. Do you have coverage for data only? Do you have a coverage for money as well? And understand what you have in place, because you don't want to find that out when you need it and not thinking that you had what you wanted in place and now you're relying on it and it's not there. IT professionals are not necessarily security experts. This is one thing you definitely also want to take away in understanding that the company that can come out and fix your day-to-day printer issues or email issues or things like that are not necessarily security experts. We as a security company spend hours upon hours of training ourselves on a weekly basis and trying to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of the security world, and constantly looking to make sure our products and services are providing the most security for our clients. And it is very, very important that you also have a company in place that has a security focus. When we go out and we do this type of testing and we meet with other IT companies, it's becoming more and more evident that that is not the case, that a lot of IT companies are very good at doing their part, break and fix type of situation, but they do not understand the security side of the house. And in this day and age, it's very, very important that you have a company that can look at your network and your business as a whole and understand the risks that you're facing, understand the security that needs to be in place, and understand how to maintain that. And that's something I would definitely encourage you to do as well, is make sure the company that handles your IT are actually trained in IT security as well. And again, I list train your employees again because it is very, very important. It is important. It is a missing link, and it's something that should be done on a continuous basis. The more information they have in front of them, the better equipped they are to handle the issues. All right, so I guess right now, if Jeremy is good with taking questions, because if I ask you these questions, you're not going to be able to answer them. So I don't know, Jeremy, are there any questions out there?
All right. Let's see. I apologize if there's any feedback. Melissa, I think I'm going to mute your mic while we address any questions, and I'll unmute you then after I pitch the question to you.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right. We have had a few questions come in, and just as a reminder, we're going to spend the last 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes answering Q&A, and you can submit them through the questions box. Melissa, one question that came in from Michael, interesting question with the Equifax and Anthem hacks, says exposing a huge amount of valuable NPI. how can a specific breach now be attributed to any particular small business? Should everyone now freeze their credit histories with the three rating services to protect themselves?
Okay, that's a very good question. I personally did. I went through and froze my credit with all three credit reporting agencies. I would, it's a personal decision. I felt when, with Equifax and knowing the type of information they collected and stored on really everybody who's ever had any type of credit, I was not comfortable with just having my credit wide open. Right now, I want to see how things shook out. So I do suggest that. I do recommend it. It's really a personal choice. I think some of these credit reporting agencies also allow you to lock it, which is a little bit different than freezing it. But that's something I would encourage that you take a look at and make a personal decision. Again, I chose to go ahead and freeze our credit just to be safe.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Question on passwords. Anthony asks if you recommend using a password manager.
No, we use LastPass. That is the password manager that we use, and it's we found it to be very, very easy to use and something that we've had good luck with. So that's the one that we recommend.
Okay, a lot of questions popping in here now. I'll try to manage them. We'll get through as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, on the last slide is Melissa's email address, so feel free to reach out to her. Let's see here. I actually had a question, and Melanie is asking, I think, the same question. When we were talking about hovering over email addresses, and you talked about the release upon hovering. I was wondering what that meant, and then Melanie's asking, when you're talking about hovering over the questionable link, does that actually activate the phish?
All right, that's a good question. Basically, we've seen some instances with malicious software being embedded in emails, and that's how like ransomware attacks occur, where it is activated upon hovering over a link. So it's not necessarily in the email address itself, but if you receive an email, and we've all received them, like, click here to, download this form, in the body of the email, and you hover over it, there are certain malware that is now being activated from that hover. So it is something that you do need to look out for, and it would appear in the body of the email. There are, not to freak everyone out even more, but there have been instances, they're rare, but where malware is activated upon being dropped in the inbox. It's rare, but it's coming down the pipe. So, but right now, when I'm talking about hovering over links, that's in the body of the email. We have seen malware activated. So the best thing to do is not, if you're suspicious of that email at all, I would say do not hover over a link in it.
Okay, a little follow-up on hovering and links. And Robert asked if links can be masked so that hovering over them can be, can they be disguised?
Can links be masked so hovering over? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Can you say it one more time, Jeremy?
Can links be masked so that hovering over them can be disguised?
Yes. So can links be masked so hovering over disguise? I assume what you mean is can when you hover, can the writing be spoofed, if you will, where it says something other, can it be changed and masked so you don't really know
Yeah, I think that's it.
Where the link is going? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we do phishing simulations for our clients where we're able to, and I perform a lot of them, and I'm not the most tech savvy person, and I am able to easily spoof email addresses and spoof links. So it is something that is commonly done, absolutely.
All right. This one's more on passwords from Stephen. Hopefully I can get the question right. There was a Wall Street Journal article recently talking about old password rules and if you should ignore them now. So I think he's looking for advice on how to create a password, use long pass phrases instead of 8 characters, and other cute substitutes. So any advice on password creation?
Sure. Passphrases are definitely something in the IT security world, they say, versus passwords. At least they should be 10 to 12 characters in length. Really, the longer it is, the better. The longer it is, the longer it takes to crack it. So my main advice is to make it complex, meaning upper and lower case. They do, when I talked about the dictionary attacks where they have the words listed in there, the most commonly used passwords, they also have the trends on the way the passwords are created, meaning instead of an E, you use a 3, instead of an A, you use a 4. So I would avoid doing things like that. You really want to make it make no sense and have letters not mean numbers and so on and so forth. Again, it's really about the complexity and the length of it that will take longer, so the attacker will move on and not even try.
All right, good insight. Getting a few questions, asking for recommendations or insights on specific questions. A lot there. We're not going to spend too much time addressing whether Melissa gives a stamp of approval for certain companies. But if you want to give her a call and chat her up or email her, I encourage you to do so. A question from Tammy, which I think others are probably experiencing, that many agents are using Dropbox to share documents. So she's curious if this is a safe way to receive information, emails from them. And I think Dropbox actually had an attack earlier this year, last year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they did. They've had several attacks. I would advise against using Dropbox. Your documents are not encrypted in transit or when they're stored up there. So I would look into a different type of file sharing system. ShareFile has one that is encrypted. So I would look into a different file share type of system. Dropbox is not something at all that we use. In fact, anytime someone tries to send me something via Dropbox, I have them do it another way because I'm not going to install that. So I would say definitely not.
A little follow-up. Lisa asked about Dropbox for Business. I'm not familiar about that one.
It is really not any better. I would not use. Yeah, I think there's other tools out there that serve the same purpose that are more secure. So I would definitely look into using those before Dropbox.
Okay, good advice. Sure, we have several small agents, small title companies on the call. Lee is one of them. He says small business, small rural Wisconsin town. Obviously, we're not making sales pitches, but Melissa is in this business. So Lee, if you're interested in maybe a good security company, you could start here. Other ones could a couple of elite ALTA elite providers also offer similar services. So those are a couple of starting points. Let's see here. Sharon asks that if or says that you should call the FBI, Melissa, as you stated in your presentation, call the FBI if you're a victim of a fraud, but should you also call them if you catch an attempted fraud and send them a copy of the email you received? So should there be interaction with the FBI on that standpoint too?
Absolutely. So if they want you to go to ic3.gov and submit any phishing emails that you've received, whether you've fallen victim to them or not. If you've caught it saying, hey, I know this is a phishing email, they want you to upload that because they want to be able to look at where it's coming from and see if they can start piecing things together. If, of course, you've fallen victim to it, then you would actually call the FBI. But they want to see the emails whether or not you've fallen victim or not.
Okay. All right. Take one more question here, then we'll wrap it up. And again, if we didn't get your question, please feel free to reach out to Melissa. Question from Mark and Melissa. I'm not sure. I don't think you're an attorney, but pose it anyway. If not, if you can't address it, Mark, we can connect you with some attorneys we have in this space that are actually representing title companies in one of these attacks. Mark was wondering if you're aware of any cyber insurance providers paying any claims for breaches.
Well, for breaches overall, yes. The problem I found, and I have not identified a cyber insurance company that I'm aware of that will pay if you were to fraudulent or wire money into a fraudulent account. I have not come by a cyber insurance company that will pay that type of claim where your employee has, sent the money elsewhere. I have not seen that happen, but there are, yes, cyber insurance companies will cover breaches depending on, if you have all your ducks in a row. They do make you, when you get a cyber insurance policy, there is a checklist that you have to meet. Do you have your security in place? Do you have testing done? There's a whole cybersecurity checklist. So as long as what you have said that you have in place and the breach happens, then I have seen them pay out. The wiring fraud, I have not seen a title agent recover from that through insurance.
Yeah, and I think some of those cases might just be really new right now, so nothing has been really settled in the litigation aspect of it.
Yeah, and the cyber insurance is definitely a changing industry. I mean, they're really having to change a lot of the way their policies are written and things like that. But it's important. That's why it's really important to understand what you have before you need it, and that way you're prepared if something happens.
Okay, all right. I think we're going to wrap up now. Melissa, thank you for some of the great information on cybersecurity. Hope everyone leaves the presentation with some ideas that they can implement today. If you missed parts of today's webinar or think others in your office would benefit from listening, a recording of the presentation will be available for replay later this week at alta.org/title topics. Looking ahead next month, we will shift gears to electronic closings and how they affect how title and settlement agents operate. So please keep an eye out for registration information for that presentation. And with that, that will bring us to the conclusion of today's presentation. Again, thank you, Melissa, for providing some timely cybersecurity training. Also need to thank Fidelity once again for sponsoring today's webinar. I hope all the listeners found the presentation useful. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all very much.